And then over at Aston Villa, a situation that continues to cause issues for them is the registration problem regarding the youngster Brian Maggio. They paid 10 million to sign him from Metz back in January, a player with big potential in the game. They currently can't register him until he turns 18 at his next birthday in January, despite the fact that he's actually born in England. Villa are appealing against that block on his registration. Do you see there being any chance of that being successful?
It's going to be tricky for it's going to CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and if I remember, there was Leeds had a similar case like this before, and it didn't quite work out, and they had to wait until he was 18. Look, CAS could decide that this is a restraint of trade for the young kid. Uh, the fact that he's born in the UK, though, doesn't really matter in the football sense, although I think it should do to some degree, but it doesn't in the football rules because he's played for Luxembourg and different things as well, like that apparently complicates the whole situation. Um, CAS may find a way to return it. As I say, the lawyers may argue a restraint of trade position for the young boy, still 17 and being restricted. And they'll have lots of examples now of 16, 17-year-olds actually breaking into the Premier League and performing. So it's not a ridiculous argument anymore when you see Max Dolman and all the rest of them coming through. It would have been difficult to put that argument before when most, very few under 18s were actually in the Premier League. Now there's a number of cases where they could argue that. So that argument could win the day that they're genuinely restricting an opportunity here. Um, Otherwise, it'll have to wait until his birthday in January, and that'll be, I think, 10 million they paid for him. He'll have to just sit there in limbo until January, his 18th birthday, and hopefully he can celebrate his 18th, knowing he'll be able to play in the Premier League. Some of these football rules, though, are slightly archaic. I think everybody would agree. And hopefully CAS may see some sense and release him early, as I say, because there are now more precedents of genuinely young players coming in and getting minutes in Premier League games. So it's no longer just an argument that we could pick him. It's certainly shown that a lot of clubs are picking kids of that age. So he probably deserves his chance. He'll be frustrated. Everybody will be frustrated. The club have invested in him and they haven't been able to use it. Should they have done more due diligence before they hired him? It's possible, but still, it's 50-50, but I'm hoping that he gets a chance to play because I don't think any young talent should be restricted because of the basis of some ridiculous rule like this.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of sort of rules in play in the Premier League at the moment. We've obviously spoken heavily about PSR throughout this podcast. It's a situation that Hull are being faced with at the moment as well. It's looking likely that they're going to overspend the PSR limit by about 6 million. There's been talk of a points deduction. Some financial experts, Stefan Borson included, believe that only maybe around the 2 or 3 point mark. It's been suggested that they're going to need to sell some of their squad to balance out that breach. How damaging do you see that being for their hopes of staying up?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult one, and obviously I listen to Stefan's opinions quite a lot, and understand his thinking in many areas. Even though he does tend to have Man City coloured glasses on a lot of his interactions, but still, look, with Hull, there's a couple of things that they can still do. They've got to the end of June to be able to sell players and get this fixed. And even then, they could still extend their accounting period by another month. So that could give them all of July. So they've got time to actually sell either assets to themselves or something along the Chelsea hotel line, or actually selling players. The question they've got is, of course, being in the Premiership, you don't want to sell your best players. You want to, try and keep them. But nevertheless, I think 2 or 3 points, if it was to come to that, would be damaging because we've seen how close the relegation battles can be. I think Hull would be realistic to know that they would be at the bottom of the table, certainly pushing to stay up, and those 2 or 3 points could be quite crucial. So it's a difficult situation, but I think the present owner is quite relaxed about it because he's got time, and that gives you the options to try and do it. And I'm pretty sure that they'll come up with a solution to avoid being in breach. And I think that they will avoid the points because It's, as I say, it's going to be a pretty crucial factor for them next season. It's just who they have to sell is going to be the big question mark, or how else can they cover this breach by selling internal assets, etc. So there'll be an answer to this, and I'm pretty confident that Hull will get this fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then down in the Championship, there's been an eye-catching situation emerge at Birmingham City. They've announced a pre-season friendly at home against Barcelona. Obviously, a club with worldwide interest behind them. How much do you see that being likely to sort of boost Birmingham's coffers?
What a glamour fixture, isn't it, for Birmingham? Certainly a statement of intent, but I don't really think they're going to be getting that much money out of this, to be honest. Uh, Look, I've dealt with Barcelona on friendlies before in the past. I know that the rules and sort of the things that they want, and that there'll be a charge for them playing at Birmingham. So there'll be a cost for getting the team there, and it'll be up to Birmingham to maximise the revenue on their streaming services worldwide. And obviously on the match day there'll be big hospitality packages, etc., and all sorts of events around it as well. So I don't see it being that. It's more about status to me. I think if Birmingham are lucky, they may make about £1 million profit out of the whole thing. So it's not game changing in terms of the money, but it's certainly they're trying to announce that Birmingham is back in the big league, is what they're trying to say. And that's really what this is about. It's about Knighthead, and they keep on trying to make statements, and give them their chance. They're trying very hard. We've had all the stadium talk and all those those wonderful artist impressions. Yet to see if that can become reality. But they're certainly determined to try and show they're up there. And obviously, with Tom Brady and the whole thing, they're trying to make it a show business. And Barca, of course, with Anthony Gordon coming in, will be an interesting, friendly to play in. I don't know if Lamine Yamal will be back or not. I don't know what the conditions of the friendly are. I would doubt those players would be stipulated. Normally, you have some of your star players that may already, after the World Cup, will still be on a break, so they may not be there. But still, Barcelona, the name alone will be enough to guarantee certainly a full St Andrews paying at a reasonable level, and some worldwide interest around. The Barcelona fans and the Birmingham fans around the world will be chipping in and paying a fee to get it. So once you take away Barcelona's fee for turning up, then I think, as I say, I would expect maybe 1 million, possibly just a little bit more than that for Birmingham. But it's more about the status and the excitement this will bring to the club.
And then one of the sort of big kind of pressing stories at the moment has been that legal dispute between Everton and Burnley. When we spoke last week, you were very keen to sort of point out the precedent that that potentially sets for clubs moving forward. We're now seeing Leeds considering legal options over Leicester after they breached PSR in the Championship back in 23-24. It's a similar situation to that Everton-Burnley dispute where Leeds believe it may have prevented them from going up. Do you see Leeds having any chance of getting compensation out of that?
Well, I don't think the case is quite as strong, and I'm not saying that I thought the Burnley case was strong. I still don't think it is that, to be honest. But I think this is a classic example now where football needs to get a grip before this really spirals and there becomes a tsunami of these sort of lawsuits. They've got to do this deal privately between themselves. And I think that could get done. I think there could well be a chat between the both clubs. Even if they're to have an independent mediator, I think they should try and get it done. Uh, I don't think the cases are as strong on both sides. But still, look, there is merit on both sides, but not really strength of a dominating argument. So this is a perfect example of clubs getting together and maybe coming to an agreement. Maybe something around 4 or 5 million is the sort of number I'd be thinking about, and agreeing that and not going legal and not going into the resolution side of this. Otherwise, we're opening a trapdoor that so many clubs are going to fall down, and it's going to be disastrous for football, with money disappearing out of the game into the hands of the lawyers. And that's what I would like to try and avoid if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been pointed out by some sort of financial experts that Everton and Forest both breached the year before as well, obviously when Leeds were relegated. Do you see them turning towards that scenario as well, or do you think that's something else that could be settled behind the scenes?
Again, it's something that everybody now is reviewing these cases, and they're all stacking them up and trying to get cards to play. But there's got to be a mechanism beyond this situation of going into the legal framework. and making claims against the other. There's got to be a way to fix it. Otherwise, it just becomes a cancer in the game. Every boardroom would be, I think, must be one of the hardest places to go into now when you're visiting other teams and you're then involved in a lawsuit like that. It'd be very hard to have conversation over lunch. And I think it's going to stop a lot of the ability of clubs to cooperate together for for better points in the game, for stronger points of improvement that can be made, because they're all going to be involved in these bitter fights that are going to go on, and it's just not the spirit of the Premier League that I knew when I was heavily involved, and I was on the board of the Premier League and the shareholders board for a long period, and I saw under Richard Scudamore a lot of the growth that happened. And that was because clubs actually did reach out to each other and did try and build bonds together as best they could for things that may benefit everybody. But I'm seeing that whole spirit is starting to erode, and that really worries me that we're now getting very insular, and it's the lawyers dictating the policy of the clubs rather than the owners. And I think the owners have got to get a grip on this quickly, and it's my urgent appeal to them today to really think about this and to stop the rot of these sort of cases going forward. Now, these clubs who we've just talked about are the ones who are right at the front of this and have got a chance to stop it now. So I would urge them to drop these appeals and get in a room together and sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely sort of feels like it could be heading down a slippery slope, if not. And then we'll stick with that theme of Everton and Leeds. They're both battling for a deal to sign the Feyenoord striker Ayase Ueda, who also has interest from the Bundesliga. He got 26 league goals in Holland last season and he's already scored two at the World Cup for Japan. Do you see him being likely to pick the Premier League over a move to Germany?
Well, normally the Premier League does win over these sort of things with wages and glamour appeal, etc., and building the player's profile in his own country, etc. As I understand it, the differences of Feyenoord looking at 35 million valuation, Everton are offering about 20, from what I understand. Um, I think this is another one that the World Cup, as you say, he's already scored a couple of goals. Japan have been looking quite good. Uh, he certainly seems to be a talent, unproven once again though in the Premier League, and we've seen a number of Dutch strikers who've come over, being the next great thing, and haven't quite done it in the Premier League. So I think he's they've got to forget the World Cup is one thing, and let's just although the valuation won't, we've got to try and forget the World Cup and look at his ability in terms of Premier League and the way that the clubs play. I think Everton would probably be favourites right now ahead of Leeds, from what I understand. But Leeds may go further to bridge that gap with Feyenoord's valuation, and if they do, then I think that's going to be the key as to where it goes. But I think the player, from what I'm hearing, would prefer Everton if possible. So I'm hopeful that he could come forward. But I'm going to be watching him further in the World Cup. I'm not yet convinced that he is Premier League material, but listen, we'll wait and see. But that's where I think the deal stands as we speak today.